mean, all I was gonna say was, yeah, maybe you belong together or maybe you don't. So, like you said, when people hear these songs, watch these movies, they take it and apply it to their life. They're like driving down the street in their car screaming, "We belong together." And it's like, no, girl, no, y'all don't. And this song and artist know nothing about your life. Hey, girlfriends, welcome to another episode of Girlfriends and Goals. We're your hosts, Miosha
and Samaria.
This podcast is a space where we'll talk about friendships, life goals, a little bit of pop culture, and all things womanhood.
Our top goal this year is to grow our podcast audience. So if you're new here or you're an avid listener of this podcast, please subscribe, leave us a 5-star rating, write a review, and be sure to share this episode with a girlfriend or two.
All right, we're going to jump into our first segment, which is called Get Into It, where we talk about a topic that's been trending in the blogs for the past week or so. And today, we are going to talk about Kiki Sheard Kelly and the comments that she made in her most recent Page Six interview. So I'm going to read a few lines of her comments, and I'd love to get Samaria's thoughts on this topic. All right, so just to give some context, she was asked in the interview what was some advice that her mom gave her as a recently married woman. So just a little bit of backstory. She got married, I believe, in December of 2020. So at this point, she's been married for about 2 years. Mm-hmm. And she says in the interview, "My mama has already told me to not have too many people around your house. I don't care how good you trust them or whatever it is. I'm very mindful and careful. I would buy a friend a hotel room before I let them stay at my house." She goes on to say, "Am I supposed to let them stay in my home? Because we as believers, we believe that we're supposed to share with others, but I'm not sharing my man. I think there's a such thing as boundaries that some friends don't understand and can't get with," she added. So Samaria, I wanted to ask you, have you ever had any advice similar to this or heard of this advice? And what are your thoughts on not letting your friends stay at your house being a married woman? And when I say stay at your house, I mean staying overnight. So say a friend is in town and visiting, because I think that's the situation that she was referring to.
I don't know that I've heard this advice before, but I'm not mad at it. Like I think her mom is just trying to like give her some type of wisdom. I think she's trying to say, hey, I know you think like all your friends might have your back or aren't envious of what you might have, but just be careful. So yeah, I don't mind it too much. I think moms will mom, right? Mm-hmm. But as far as she goes, I do think it's really just a note to protect what it is that you have. And so I know like on the internet, people are like, oh, if a man's going to cheat, he's going to cheat. Yes, absolutely. So I don't think it was from the perspective of, oh, your husband, is shady, so you got to keep your eye on him. I don't know. I didn't hear it that way, but maybe obviously a lot of people did. Yeah, but I didn't hear it that way. I think I just heard it as, hey, like you have a home to protect now. And you can't be so lax about it. You can't, just let everybody in there thinking their intentions, or people whose intentions you don't even know. Like you can't just let it be a free for all. So you have to just be mindful of the people that you have around you, because even if your husband is, like 100% faithful, he's solid, you still don't want people around who are trying to like test his faithfulness to you. I don't know. Mm-hmm. So I didn't see it as her trying to like keep an eye on her man. I think I just saw it as, okay, you have something maybe to protect now, so just be wise about it. That's how I saw it. But, what are your
Yeah.
thoughts? I could be wrong.
Yeah, you're right. On the internet, there were definitely two sides where I think I actually saw, I felt like where most women were like, oh, yeah, I could get with that. I
Hmm.
understand that. But then I did see a lot of women who were, I don't know if it was just that they were like, oh, well, your husband, if your husband wants to cheat, he's going to cheat, but more so like, hey, why are you just focused on your friends? Just in the commentary that she was making.
Hmm.
And so, I could kind of see it from both sides, but I'll say that I've actually never heard of this advice specifically when
Hmm.
it comes to marriage and friends. I think with any marriage you should protect it,
Yeah.
and I think that goes even outside of the people coming to stay at your house. It could be you telling your friends your marital business as
Mm.
well. Like, it just doesn't have to be physical. So yeah, I
Yeah.
haven't heard that advice, and I would say that I can't say that I would necessarily follow that, and
Hmm.
I haven't followed it in the past. I mean, I've had friends who have traveled in from out of town, and I
Yeah.
love when they're able to come stay with me. And um, yes, like a hotel is always an option, but I just like, we're all here when we wake up in the morning and we're able to
Hmm.
maximize our time, especially when they don't come visit very often. So I can't say that I'd necessarily adhere to that advice,
Okay.
but I think, hey, if that works for her, and who knows? I mean, maybe her mom saw her having a certain dynamic with her friends. Maybe they were
Right.
super duper close. So she was just kind of putting it out there like, hey, be mindful of this and that things do shift after you get married.
You know what? So just because you added like, oh, I kind of would want my friends around. I think back to one of the episodes that we did where I was like, I don't like if I have a message for your husband, unless I'm like trying to surprise you or something like that, I text it to you. I'm like, tell him I said
Mhm.
whatever. And so I wonder if like I've put those boundaries on myself, and I wonder if she has friends who maybe aren't of the same mind, like they don't put the boundaries on themselves. So now she has to establish them. So that's one thing. And I'm like your really close friend, right? But
Mhm.
then you have this other group of friends who aren't necessarily super close to you. Like you and I, we talk a few times a week. We're in each other's spaces enough. So you kind of
Mhm.
have an idea. Like I feel like we know each other, right? But
Mhm.
then there are friends who you just associate with. And I think if they were in town, maybe you wouldn't be like, oh yeah, come and stay over. So I think I think it depends on the
Right.
closeness of the friendship. Like how well do you know these people? So I don't I don't think her mom was wrong for being like, watch your friends. Especially if she was
Mhm.
talking about friends who aren't as close, like more associates, like don't think
Yeah.
everybody's your bestie and be bringing them into your sacred space. I hate to say it like that, make it sound all dramatic, but this is in my head the message that her mom was trying to get across to her, or at least the message that she received based on how she presented it in the interview.
Yeah, and she did say that some friends don't know that balance and can't understand the balance.
Yeah.
So it sounds like she was quoting something very specific. Who knows, a specific person or situation?
Yeah.
But I will say advice that I have heard in
Mhm.
regards to marriage and people coming to stay with you, family and friends. I have seen where people will say like, hey, as a married couple, you should be aligned on like who's allowed to come stay, for
Mhm.
how long they're staying, especially if you have family members who are like, oh, I'm going to come show up for 3 months at a time.
Mhm.
Because that definitely will impact things if they're staying with you for that long. So I've heard that, but
Yeah.
I haven't heard the friendship thing. But hey, there must be something to it if mama sheared
Caring.
Clark. Yeah.
Right. Clark sharing.
Yeah, Clark sheared.
No, but like in movies and stuff, you see like the cousin Faith in Soul Food, where she was family, but something was going on. And I haven't seen this movie in a while, but the Players Club, wasn't it something where her cousin and her like man, or something like that. So you see it in film, and I'm sure it happens in real life too. So to some people, it's probably like, oh no, that's weird advice to give. But I mean, perhaps there are real life situations out there that, like you said, mama knows about, and she's just trying to help her daughter out. Yeah. So
Right.
all right. And so we're going to jump into today's topic, which is the makeup breakup cycle. You guys know, like, when you're in a relationship and things don't go well and there's a breakup, and then you like miss the person, and then a few weeks later you guys are back together, and then there might be another breakup and another makeup. So yeah, that's what we're talking about today. And the first question I kind of want to pose to you, Miosha, is like, what is your overall thought on like couples breaking up and then making up and continuing that cycle? Like, have you seen it end up successful or unsuccessful most of the times? Or do you feel like once it's over, people should just completely walk away?
Yeah, so I'd say I am not here for the makeup breakup cycle. It
Okay.
just feels and seems very exhausting, even on the outside looking in. Even when I haven't been a part of the situation, I'm just like, "Ooh, this is a lot." And I don't think that relationships necessarily have to be that way.
Hmm.
I think a lot of people go into it with good intentions. They really want to make it work. But from what I see, a lot of times it's trying over and over again with the same person, but not getting any different results. So, yeah, I'm just not here for it. I don't think that it's an ideal situation. And I would say that there is a certain level of comfort with stability without these
Mm-hmm.
extreme highs and lows that I think most people can appreciate and what most people want. Um, and then as far as like me seeing it, I mean, I do know of one couple who has had that dynamic, who has gone on to successfully be married, and they seem to be very happy right now. But I'd say that that's not the norm. I
Mm.
feel like they're kind of the outlier that I know. And then, of course, we've seen it with married couples where they've gotten completely divorced. I've actually seen that in my personal life, and
Oh
they've
wow.
remarried. Yeah. So of famous people we know, Greg and Nene Leakes, they had
Judge
very
Judy.
yeah, Judge Judy. So I mean, it does happen, but I don't think that that's the norm. I think it's the exception to the rule. What about you?
Yeah, so hmm. I want to say, oh, absolutely not, but I'm gonna give this a 95-5. So 95% of the time, I think it is a situation where you just need to let that go. And then 5% of the time, I think if you're dealing with people who have spent enough time apart, I think a lot of the problem is that people who are like away from each other for a month, they're like, oh, I really miss this person. So no like transformation has taken place in either one of you, and then you're just like, oh, we're going to try it again, being our same
Hmm.
selves. So I want to like just add some cushion there for that 5%, where maybe they spend enough time apart, they're committed to maturing, and then they decide to come back together. But mostly, I don't think it's useful. It's just a difficult situation, and I know, like, even doing this episode, like, it's not going to stop anybody from doing it or not, just because it's one of those things where you do it because you're like, I'm not satisfied with where things were, and I want to try again. So like, until people get to that stage where they're ready to walk away, there's no sense in saying, oh, you should walk away, because most of the time they're not going to listen, right? But I do think most of the time it is a waste. And like you said, there's a certain level of stability, but also like security with, okay, we're locked in. Yeah, we've had arguments or conflict, and we've still like been able to resolve it. We've had like a steady stream of relationship. Like, I think that's worth something. So yeah, 95% no, just walk away, y'all. 5%, mm, sure, work it out maybe.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned time because the couple that I know of that did get remarried,
Mhm.
I believe, were divorced for over 10 years. And
What?
so, yeah, and they found their way back to each other. So, yeah, I think time is important for significant change to happen.
Yeah, you know that happened with Sinbad too. Now that we're calling out like celebrities, but Sinbad, I think he and his wife had gotten divorced and then they got back together after a long time. I don't know of any couples like personally, but I know of a person, like a real life person, not a celebrity, because they know a friend who knows a friend or whatever. But and I think in their dating life, they did have maybe a year or so of distance, like maybe a little bit over a year, and they came back and it worked out and they've gotten married and they're still together. But yeah, definitely the exception.
Yeah. So, do you think that there's certain messaging that encourages people or discourages people to
Mm.
have this dynamic in society?
The one that I can think of right off the top of my head is Whitley and Dwayne from A Different World. So I think we see this dynamic in movies. We sit down at the movie theater, well, not anymore, really, but we sit down to watch a movie, and there's always that conflict. There's always that moment where people go their separate ways and then come back together. So I do think that does um, encourage it. I think with the whole Dwayne and Whitley situation, especially if you watched it as a younger person, you're kind of like, oh, they ended up together, right? Or I don't want to put Issa and Lawrence in this category, but kind of, right? Issa and Lawrence because they ended up together in the end. But yeah, I think the fact that those things show up in movies or on TV, it kind of bleeds into real life and people thinking, oh, I am the exception. Like everybody thinks they're the exception. Nobody wants to be the rule when, statistically the odds aren't in your favor. But yeah, so that's what I think. I think there is definitely messaging that encourages it. How about you?
Yeah, I'd agree. And I thought of music initially.
Hmm.
So, within R&B, there's just a lot of praise and upliftment for fighting for your love. And the one song that I thought about was We Belong Together by Mariah Carey. And
No, you will not mess this song up for us. Whatever you were about to say, take it back.
I mean, all I was going to say was, yeah, maybe you belong together or maybe you don't. So, like you said, when people hear these songs, watch these movies, they take it and apply it to their life. They're like driving down the street in their car screaming, "We belong together." And it's like, no, girl, no, y'all don't. And this song and artist know nothing about your life.
Yeah, you know what's funny? There's this Tyler Perry movie. I think it might be called Nobody's Fool, but it has like Tika Sumpter, Whoopi Goldberg is in there, and Tiffany Haddish. And
Mm.
when I tell you, this woman played this man so many times, literally took his heart out and stomped on it several times, not just one. Like most movies, we just get one time. It was at least three in this movie. And in the end, she comes and plays a particular song, R&B song, outside of his cabin or whatever, and they ended up together. I'm like, this cannot be healthy. Like we cannot be just taking in consuming this type of like toxicity and be okay. We are not okay watching this type of stuff. But do you have like a rule of thumb on how you would give feedback on if someone should make up with an ex?
Yeah, I don't like giving relationship advice, especially
Mhm.
to people that I'm not super close with. There's only like a handful of people that I would. But
Mhm.
if I was approached like, "Hey, I'm interested in your feedback," I'd say my number one rule of thumb is if they're married, I don't give any advice other than, hey, I think you should go to therapy, counseling, talk to your pastor, seek out professional advice. And then if it is a couple where they are dating and they've already broken up, and my girlfriend comes to me and she's like, oh, I'm entertaining the idea of getting back with him, I would not necessarily give advice, but just encourage her to lean on her own intuition and what initially kind of pushed her to or push them to break up, because I don't know who would have broken up with who, but kind of lean on your intuition, like you're in it. And most of the time, people don't tell you the full story. So any feedback I would be giving could be biased, or just I wouldn't have all the information. And it makes me think of this YouTuber who made the comment and said that when people tell stories, they like to start in the middle. And I feel like when it comes to relationships, that's definitely typically how it goes. Like you're not getting the full scope. And so, yeah, I would tell them to lean on their own intuition. And if you've already broken up, maybe think about why you didn't explore other avenues prior to breaking up. So even if it was, hey, I need a little bit of space, or we need to go to counseling, like if you're already at the breakup, lean on your intuition. And then if they haven't broken up yet, I would just, if they were like, hey, like, what do you think about, is this something that's worthy of me breaking up with them? I would give them a simple yes or no, because sometimes you just want to know, like, am I being petty? Is this warranted? Like, girl, am I tripping? And sometimes I'm like, yeah, girl, you tripping. But yeah, I would give a high level yes or no and why, but I wouldn't coach them or encourage them in one direction or the other. What about you?
Yeah. I said no, I don't have a rule of thumb. Just because every situation is so different. But I do remember there's this, I don't know if you'll call her an influencer, but her name is Lexi. I don't know. Have you heard of Lexi? I think her Instagram's like Lexi Television. But she was like a Christian singer, and she's a Christian comedian as well. So she has a pretty decent following on Instagram. But she was planning this huge wedding in well, I don't know if it was huge, but huge enough that like I had heard about it and like people knew about it, right? And it
Mhm.
was a destination wedding, and she like was doing her workout, to get into her dress, all this stuff. And then all of a sudden, like she went to Jamaica where her wedding was supposed to be, but there was no wedding. And it turns out that like not too long before, they called everything off. And one of the things that she said was, if y'all are breaking up and coming back together several times, that's something to watch out for. And she had lived it, so I'm gonna take her word for it and just pass that along. But yeah, and it's sad that it got to the point where they were like a month or so before their wedding before they called it out, called it off. But yeah, I think that was really good advice. So no, I don't have a rule of thumb. Every situation is different. Sometimes, the girls do be tripping, but yeah, no, I don't have like a rule of thumb. Like I'm not the friend who's always going to be like, oh, you should leave him, or no, just go ahead and stay. Like I'm neither one of those. I'll try to ask questions and maybe
Mhm.
get you to that point, but I can't advise anybody. I'm trying to make it myself, y'all. I'm trying to survive as well. So yeah.
So, so speaking of friendships,
hmm
have you seen this makeup breakup cycle affect friendships? And if so, how? Meaning, like you're the friend that's observing the friend in this pattern.
Hmm. I have never directly been in this situation. At least I don't think so.
Hmm.
Where I'm like, and definitely not as an adult. Let me say that I
Okay.
haven't seen it as an adult. So yeah, I can't say that I have. The closest that I've been to it was a friend of a friend, and it was a long time. Like it was a period of at least 10 years, where this couple had been like breaking up and making up and back and forth. And during that time, they had like some children.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so and I just remember every time like the Facebook status would go up saying, "Oh, we're not together anymore or single," they would come back and be like engaged or something like that. Like it was one of those situations. But the mutual friend who we have, wasn't very involved. She would just be like, "Oh yeah, they're back together. Oh yeah, they're back apart." Like she was not, she was not getting involved at all. I don't know that I would be that friend, but I do think her life was more peaceful not being involved in their back and forth so many times. Have you seen it affect friendships though?
Well, I can't say that it's affected my friendships in like a negative way, but I have been that friend that has observed a friend in, well, more than one friend in this cycle.
Hmm.
And so I can't say that it's had a negative effect, but it has definitely affected like how we spend our time. So
Mm,
if they were kind of in a downward spiral, then obviously, we're talking about it. I'm trying to cheer her up and,
yeah.
you're kind of in it with them. But like you said, how the friend of the friend was like, oh, they're back together. It was kind of like, oh, it's Tuesday.
Hmm.
After a period of time, you're just not as emotionally invested because it can become draining
Yeah.
being that support person, trying to carry them through it or help them through it. And especially if, like early on, you were trying to give them advice or help them,
Hmm.
over time, you're just like, okay, I kind of see what this is. And then you have to kind of adjust what your support level will be when, you're not in it. So you definitely don't know if there's going to be an end or if this cycle is going to continue forever. And so, yeah, I have observed it, and it's not an easy thing to watch,
Mm, yeah.
because it's a fine line. You don't want to be like, oh, girl, you need to leave him. And you don't want to talk bad about him because they probably are going to end up back together.
Right.
And then that makes things awkward. And especially if you have a friend who may have slipped up and told her guy something that you've said while trying to comfort.
Now he's mad at you.
Now he don't like you. And so, yeah, it's not an easy thing to watch. And I can say that as I've gotten older, I haven't seen it as much.
Hmm.
I think some of that just comes with maturity and just gaining life experiences, but definitely in my early 20s,
Mm.
there was a lot of back and forth.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people have had that experience though, like where they've gone back. So I guess in your experience, like what's either made you, if you have like double back, or what has made people in your life do the whole double back thing?
I can't say that I've personally doubled back on a relationship, but I am that person who may spend more time than probably necessary in that pre-breakup phase, like just weighing things. If I
Hmm.
feel like I'm headed in that direction, I'm not very quick to kind of pull the trigger on it because I know my personality. And if I'm like, I'm done, I'm done.
Mm.
And so I try to move forward under the mindset of like, hey, whatever I decide or whatever resolve I come to, I'm good with no changes after that. So, yeah, I can't say that I've personally done it, but I understand why people do it because, you just want to feel like you at least gave it your all and you tried, and you maybe don't want that what if. And even if that what if is there, you maybe don't want it to be because you took yourself out of the fight too soon, which I think can be a bit toxic. You have to know when to tap out and say, I'm done. So,
Yes, you gotta know when to hold them, know when to fold them. Those are the only words of that song that I know, but I think it's called Texas Hold'em. I think so. Along with what you said, like, oh, I don't want to, throw in the towel too soon. I think familiarity is a huge reason why people, do the whole, make up and break up again thing. It's like, oh, my family already knows who this person is. They came to Thanksgiving last year, so not only am I familiar with them, the family's familiar with them. And so I think that creates like some type of anxiety around, oh, now I have to tell them that this person isn't here. And I have to go through, like I have to let my family or my friends watch me go through this transition. I think also there's
mhm.
like a fear of being without somebody just because breakups are really hard and nobody wants to go through that. So it's like,
Mhm.
man, I had somebody who I could share every happy moment with, or every sad moment with. I had somebody who I had all these inside jokes with. And so I think like that weighs heavily when people are doing the whole like back and forth. And then
Mhm.
I also think sometimes there's the fear that you might not be able to do better than that person.
Oh, yeah, I've definitely seen that, like
Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, I think, yeah, I don't know. And
It
go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, it makes me think of, this saying that my coworker used to always say, like, "It's
Mhm.
better to sit with the devil you don't it's better to sit with the devil you know versus the one that you don't."
Right.
And I've I've heard that in work situations, just, why people will linger at jobs that they know they don't wanna be at, there's no upward
Yeah.
mobility, but specifically in relationships where people are like, oh, well, I know all their issues and their drama. If I
Hmm.
go out there and get with someone else, I won't know what they have going on. And there's so much work to get to that point. So
Yeah.
they get to a place of being okay and content and seeing the upside of dealing with things that they may don't necessarily like, but at least
Hmm.
they know it.
Yeah, I think that's a dangerous move in career, in relationship, in life. I think that's a very, very dangerous move. I think you are just kind of keeping yourself in a box when
Hmm.
you don't even have to be in any type of box. Like it's not like you're moving from one box to the other. You're moving from the confinement of a box to literally freedom. And so I think that's a that's a dangerous game to play. Like the devil. First of all, why devils? If this person's a devil, why are you even here? Like what is that? Like you don't have to be with a devil, sis. Like it's okay to step outside of that. But yeah, so I think people do feel like, oh, it's not so bad here, or they might believe things will change. And this is why, okay, so there's this show called Black Love. I think it might be on Oprah Winfrey Network, but they put some episodes on YouTube too. And sometimes I've seen people comment that they put struggle love couples on there. And I know that there are a lot of great couples they put on there too, because I'm aware of some of the couples that they have put on there. But this is just what the streets are saying, right? They say that sometimes they put struggle love couples on there where it's like a woman usually had to endure so much for saying, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 years. And now they're presenting on this show because they're now in a good spot. But it's like, 15 years of you dragging me unnecessarily, like, yeah, that's a devil, but why are we presenting that as black love that belongs on a screen? Like, and so yeah, I think there's that idea that like, oh, things might change. And again, it's encouraged by things that we might see in the media. And I think that's super harmful. This is more than Dwayne and Whitley. This is like real life people. So now it's giving people like even more hope that they shouldn't have about these
Yeah.
situations that are dead already.
Yeah, and just to give a specific example, when you were
Hmm.
talking about it being dangerous, I've seen a few of the episodes on YouTube, but one stands out. It was a couple where they had been together for a long time,
Hmm.
but I guess the guy had been dealing with this side chick. Long story short, the side chick burned down their house, like set their house on fire.
What? No, no, hold on. Mia, Mia just said she burned down their house. No, no, no. She set their house on. In case you didn't hear it, fire on the house.
And it was just unbelievable to watch. But I completely understand when you say, like, this is just, it's a dangerous line to toe. And yeah, I just remember watching that and thinking, oh my goodness, like this could have cost her and her kids their lives.
Yeah, it's insane. And I do like some of the couples they've had on there. Like they've had Tamia Tamia the Singer and Grant Hill.
Hmm.
You know, the Kev on stages. They've had them, Tabitha Brown and her husband. Like they've had good people, but it's like there's just that one couple or those few couples that just take us, yeah, where
They
we
take us out.
exactly. And I want to bring that up because I don't know. Well, we have an idea of the age range of people who like listen to this podcast or watch the podcast, watch our YouTube channel, which by the way, go ahead and subscribe if you haven't yet. But I just don't want somebody to be in that situation where they know it's going to be detrimental to their future, but they're staying because they fear that they can't do better. Like I'm sure you are, even if you're not a dope person, right? Somebody's going to think you are. Like there
Yeah.
are horrible people out here who have mates that think they're amazing. So, girl, let that be your encouragement to step out.
Yeah. And, I think we kind of talked on this a little bit earlier where we were trying to think of where we may have seen this,
Mhm.
cycle end up in like a successful marriage. And I think both of us basically said like, oh, we've maybe seen it like a person removed, or we maybe
Mhm.
know one person. And I think, as you mentioned earlier, the exception to the rule versus the rule is important to keep in mind with this type of relationship dynamic, especially if you're aspiring to have a stable, comfortable, long lasting relationship. If that's your goal, then being in this cycle probably isn't the best option.
Yeah, it's more headache than anything else. And I mean, who needs that? Life is hard enough. And I think especially like a situation like this, like a romantic situation, can have such it can put such a burden on you. I think we asked this question on our Instagram way back when we did the friendship breakups, and we asked, "Oh, which one is harder, a friendship breakup or a romantic breakup?" And one of my friends responded, she said, "Definitely romantic because I've never stopped eating because I lost a friend." And so it's like, but yeah, so I've never seen it up close, and I think a lot of people haven't seen it up close because it's not the norm for a
Yeah.
reason. Probably because it shouldn't be the norm, honestly.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you could give just like two or three
Mhm.
positive or negatives in terms of like participating in this cycle, like we talked a little bit earlier, but if you were to just give like one positive and one negative, what would that be?
I think I think the negative would just be staying longer in something that than you need to. So yeah, I think that's a huge, huge negative. I think it does way more damage than good because, like we said, people don't change that quickly. Not even ourselves, right? Like nobody changes that quickly, at least not like huge, significant change. And I think when you're in situations like that, it's easy to see what changes have not been made than it is to see the inch of change that has been made, just realistically, right? Like, and you're probably so upset with the situation that you're not looking for that little inch of improvement because what you want is a drastic change that's not going to happen with that quick turnaround. So that would be on the
Mhm.
negative side. I think a positive after we've trashed this whole idea, but I think a positive is just getting it out of your system so you don't have to circle back another time. Like kind of how we talked about people will stay for as long as they feel like, oh, I need to stay, like until something else takes them out of it. And so I think, if you circle back one time and see it hasn't changed, hopefully, you get it. And
Mhm.
yeah, and keep pushing. Well, what would be your like positive and negative?
So my positive would be knowing that you left nothing on the table and that you kind of gave it your all. And I don't even think that this just applies in terms of relationships, but if
Mhm.
you're that person where you may find yourself questioning, like, oh, did I give it my all, or did I do all that I could? I think you circling back will kind of put you at ease a bit. especially like in that early breakup phase where you're kind of questioning or replaying everything that's happened. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's kind of just like a gut check, like, nope, I tried it again, and that definitely was not it. Especially if the breakup is over something that isn't as clear cut. So, for example, maybe you grew apart. That maybe not that's maybe not as clear cut as, oh, this person cheated on me. So
Yeah.
you may find yourself in a position where you're like, you know what, maybe it was just a few months or a week, or we were in a rut. Let me try
Mm.
it again to see if we actually really did grow apart. So, yeah, I could see that as a positive. And then as far as the negative, I would just say that I've seen where it just seems very traumatic
Yeah.
being on this roller coaster of ups and downs and not really knowing where you stand. And I think it can have an effect on how you view relationships going forward. So,
Yeah.
unfortunately, I've seen where people have been in this dynamic, and then as soon as they are out of it, they're like, oh, well, men are this or women are that. And, just all this stuff. And it's like, no, it's because you've literally been at Six Flags, on in terms of a relationship for the
Yeah.
last 3, 4 years. So and that's not to say that they didn't have valid call outs about whoever they were potentially dealing with.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that, it's like, yeah, you have to acknowledge that this cycle doesn't necessarily contribute many positives in
Yeah.
how you'll probably view relationships going forward.
Yeah, it doesn't serve you. It can leave you like kind of damaged or not trusting people in the end. Like, yeah, it has those effects. So, I mean, besides everything that we've already said, because I think there was decent advice maybe in here. Of course, we can't tell anybody what to do. Your situation is different. Everybody's situation is different, but is there any advice that you would give? I was gonna say younger women, but even people our age, because I've known someone who was 40 and going through something like this, so it's not necessarily an age thing. But yeah, is there
Mhm.
any advice that you would say?
I'd say number one, no matter your age, just trust your intuition.
Hmm.
And especially if you were the one that was pushing for the breakup or separation, just trust those feelings and intuition on what was moving you forward on it, especially if the reason why you were breaking up is a reason that isn't aligned in terms of like your values. Like
Hmm.
if it's tied to your values, then yeah, you should probably lean on your intuition and maybe not circle back, because like Samaria said, these things take time to change. And I don't even know if I would expect for people to change their values. You could just be incompatible on those specific things. Um, and it's not to say that people or situations can't change, but even if they were to change and you were to circle back, I think just long term, just thinking about if the changes that maybe you need for them to make is one that you'll be at peace with them making. Like, is this something that they're coming to the realization in terms of their own mindset and something that they want to do? Or are they really just doing this because they want to make this relationship work with you? Which
Yeah.
you may be okay with that, but I think that that is just something to keep in mind. Like, if there's a big shift that needs to happen, is it of their own want, or is it them wanting it because they want you? And that's for
Yeah.
you to decide, like, whatever you feel comfortable with. And then the last thing I'd say is just being mindful of why you're re-entering the relationship, and that you're not doing it to appease other people, make other people happy out of a place of fear. Just because if you are going to give it another go round, you want to do it from just a place of positivity so that
Hmm.
it can be set up for success.
Yeah, not a place of like, I don't want to say desperation, but kind of like, oh, I need it. Like, this is my last resort. I need this to work. Like, never make this type of a decision because of that desperation, I think.
Or if the person is like, "Ooh, girl, I want you back," like they really, really want you. People sometimes will lay it on thick. They
Yeah.
really want the relationship to work. They have so many songs to choose from to to get their love back. And,
Yeah.
but if that's not what you want,
Right.
you should keep that in mind. Like,
You want them
don't-
back.
exactly. Don't let them wear you down, or other family members saying, like, oh, well, you don't have time, you're not married yet. Like, do it of your
Mhm.
own motivation and
Yeah.
not for anyone else.
Yeah. I think that what the last thing you just said is related to my thing that I would say, and it's to be mindful of what other people say. Everybody's opinion does not necessarily matter. For example, if like everybody else says, oh, but that's a good man, or oh, he does X, Y, and Z, that's somebody you should definitely be with. And it's like, yeah, those might be the needs that you need met. Like those might be the things that you desire, or that might be enough for you. But maybe for me, that's not. For example, there might be somebody who's like, oh, yeah, people get loud in arguments all the time. For me, that would not be okay ever. Like, you're gonna be gentle with me. Like that's one thing that you're going to have to be, right? So yeah, everybody's opinion doesn't matter. You have the needs that you need fulfilled, and they have their needs that they would like to be fulfilled. Those are different. So don't let anybody convince you because, oh, this person's from the same country as you, this person's from the same culture as you, this person has this type of career, or this person has this type of money, this type of like status or whatever. Like, if you can have all the status in the world, if you're not like consistent with me, if you're not gentle with me, if you're not someone who I can bring into different situations, I don't want it. And I understand that that's acceptable for Jane, Jesse, and whoever. But go ahead and let Jane and Jesse have you. We can separate. So yeah, just be mindful of the things that other people say, trying to convince you, oh, this is someone who you have to stay with, or this is the type of person you should be with, because they might not be aware of what you desire. And you are
Hmm.
the one who will be miserable going back and forth with somebody who serves you no good, really.
Yeah.
Um, or someone who could be serving someone else better, but it's not you. So yeah, that's what I would say to keep in mind. But thank you guys so much for tuning into this episode of the Girlfriends and Goals podcast. You've heard our thoughts on this topic, but we'd love to hear your thoughts as well. Make sure you follow us on Instagram at Girlfriends and Goals podcast, where we'll continue this conversation throughout the next week. If you haven't subscribed already, please go ahead and do that now. And don't forget to rate, review, and share. Until next time, bye.
Bye.